on some personal notes. There were a couple of other things like, I don't think it works anyway, right?
It was on TV.
You were talking about the wolves and leading the carrion. On our ranges, we have lots of poisonous plants, and we have lots of dead cattle for all the scavengers to prey on. So wolves don't just have to be there for that. The other thing, I know we talked about compensation for stuff, and people have talked about other losses other than just the depredation. And the numbers of sheep and numbers of cattle in the states, that doesn't take into account the owners of those cattle and those sheep. It just throws out big numbers to everybody. Ranchers, especially generations of ranchers, have spent generations and decades improving their herds and their flocks, improving the genetics, improving the meat quality or the wool quality or both. They're not just cattle and sheep to us. We spend our lives with them, middle of the night, middle of the snowstorm especially. I ride all summer, but I also ride all winter with a flashlight in a snowstorm, trying to save a calf. Everybody else does the same. We are doing things. We move our cattle. They do not sit in one place. Our range now is fenced into 7-8 pastures. They are moved systematically. There is a time limit, but if they need to be moved sooner or later, depending on rainfall, depending on the seasons don't come the same every year. Sometimes you're 2 weeks or 3 weeks ahead of time. Sometimes you're a couple of weeks behind. The plants bloom differently according to that. We move the cattle according to that differently. We use different strategies. When you talked last night about keeping cattle or the sheep longer in confinement before turning them out, it does create problems. Confinement means disease. It also means that someone has to feed them. Where does the feed come from? Typically, we use up our hay supply in the winter, move the cattle to the forest, raise the hay for them that summer, and start feeding again. We run out of hay. There's not grass at home. So all the coexistence strategies sound so easy and simple on paper, and they're not. And like you said, not everyone works everywhere. We tried fencing riparian area on the Book Cliffs, on the BLM, with electric fence. The deer and the elk took it out, not the cattle. The cattle were trained to electric fence. Deer and elk are not for a while. They do become trained to it eventually. But we were putting it up 3 and 4 times a day and couldn't keep up with it, and the BLM gave it up. It was the elk and the deer. We moved the cattle out of the area. So it's just not as simple as you might think. I guess that's it.
I think Sheila gets the last word, and thank you everyone for being here. And I think that with these conversations are incredibly important, and I think that we can go forward with coexistence. Thank you all for being here. How are you?